Good evening, distinguished guests. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome you to our annual parenting webinar in collaboration with the University of the West Indies, Ministry of Health and Wellness, Southeast Regional Health Authority, Western Regional Health Authority, and the Jamaican Psychiatric Association. Our focus for this evening, Parenting Generation Alpha, is both timely and essential as we navigate the ever-evolving world of raising and nurturing children in this dynamic digital era. Parenting has always been a journey filled with challenges, joys, and learning opportunities. However, Parenting Generation Alpha, that's children born between the years of 2010 until now, brings unique opportunities and responsibilities. These are the first true digital natives, growing up in a world dominated by technology, rapid change, and global connectivity. It requires us as caregivers not only to understand their world, but to equip ourselves with the tools, knowledge, and strategies to guide them effectively. Today's webinar is designed to do just that. We have gathered a wealth of knowledge and expertise from our outstanding panel of speakers who will share insights on navigating the complexities of parenting in the age of artificial intelligence, social media, and ever-expanding educational possibilities. Your presence demonstrates the commitment to learning, growth, and the future of our children. As we embark on this enlightening journey together, let us keep an open mind, a willingness to adapt, and a shared resolve to raise a generation that not only is equipped for the future, but inspired to shape it. Once again, welcome, and I wish you a fulfilling and enriching experience. Don't forget to share the link so that others can join. Thank you again for joining, and I now hand over to our moderator, Ms. Yulin Beckford, who is a counseling psychologist with sterling contribution in the mental health services in the Southeast Regional Health Authority, specifically the St. Catherine Health Department. She has 14 years experience working with children and adults and holds a Bachelor of Arts in Counseling and Theology, a Master of Arts in Counseling and Social Work, and a postgrad diploma in Loss, Grief, and Trauma Management. Ms. Beckford, over to you.
Thank you very much, Nurse Foster. Good evening, everyone. Doctors, our guests, great to have you with us again. And as was said, my name is Yulin Hyatt Beckford, and I love to tell people I work at the best institution in the whole Jamaica and the world, the Spanish Town Hospital, the best place to be. If you're not there, please come over and get some of our bestiness. And as was said before, this evening we want to look at how we can raise our this generation children, Generation Alpha. And when we talk about Generation Alpha, we are also talking about them as a mini-millions, and they're also called Generation C. These are the group of children that lives in their tablet, lives in their device that we have given them. So this evening we want to talk a little bit about how we can navigate through that. And we have a august body. We have Dr. Earl Wright, we have Dr. Bent, Dr. Leiba, and Miss Rose will be taking us through as they give us some more insight in how we manage and cope with all that is happening. Each of our presenters will take the virtual lectern, and they have 7 minutes to talk about their aspect, and then they will come back together, and then we'll have a discussion in a short after they have all given their opening speech. So without further ado, we're gonna start with Dr. Before that, we're gonna have greetings. Dr. Earl Wright will come after the greetings. We're gonna have greetings from our Director of Mental Health Services and Substance Abuse, Dr. Kevin Goldberg. Dr. Goldberg, can you just turn on your camera and talk to us? Thank you.
Thank you, moderator Mrs. Hyde Beckford, for your kind words of introduction. And I am here bringing greetings on behalf of the Mental Health Unit of Mental Health and Wellness to this very important conference or series of webinars on parenting. And commendation will be given to the organizers for staging such a parent webinar series, given the importance of our children. And as emphasized before, especially in this day and age where everything is almost going AI. Just recently, I heard of a car that's fully AI. So we're going fully AI, and I know from my own experience that when you don't use your brain cells too much, they become very lazy. So it's going to be a very challenging time, and we hope that our presenters, I know very experienced presenters, will give us insights as to how we can approach this new generation that we have to ensure they are fit and ready when they need to take over the mantle of our country. We also want to bear in mind that not only do they have this digital world to face, but they also have a history of adverse childhood experiences that may affect their development. And also has been recorded up to 50% of mental illness start before the age of 14. And then I'm sure Dr. Earl Wright will tell you that the first 1,000 days of any child development is very important. And we all know that there's no parenting manual that we are born with. It's always important to ensure that we have as much skills imparted to not only biological parents, but also those who have youngsters in their care, to ensure we are equipped with necessary skills to ensure they are nurtured and raised in a way that they can take their place in actually taking Jamaica forward as we seek to achieve the sustainable development goals of 2030. So my unit definitely endorses this parenting webinar and look forward to the speakers over the next couple of days, as I'm sure they'll give us insights as to how we can help to raise generation that can use the digital world to their advantage and to ensure that we have a very functional, very effective generation that can take over the mantle and most of us will have gone. So thank you again for having this webinar, and I look forward to the insights and the outputs that will come from the webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Goulburn. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And one of the fun facts about this generation, they said that 2.8 million Gen Z are born each week. So we have a way to go. So Dr. Earl Wright, let me tell you a little bit about him. He has a wealth of knowledge and experience. I'll just give you a little synopsis. Dr. Earl G. Wright is a consultant psychiatrist, physician, and public health specialist. He is currently a member of the Medical Council of Jamaica and chairs the Mental Health Technical Advisory Group, the Wellness Subcommittee of the Medical Council of Jamaica, and the Mental Health NCD's Subcommittee. Dr. Wright has also served as the chairman of the Mental Health and Homeless Task Force and chairman of the National Council of Drug Abuse. In addition, he has previously held the position of Director of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services in the Ministry of Health. And I'm going to add and wellness. Dr. Wright, please take the virtual mic, and your 7 minutes starts now.
Thank you very much, Mr. Becker. Thank you. Good seeing you. Thank you, Dr. Goulburn, and thanks everybody for having me. I'm going to be sharing my screen. And as Dr. Goulburn anticipated, I'm going to be talking about the foundation that we need to lay. Because if you have a house and you don't lay the foundation well, then the rest of it not going to work well. So gentle parenting and nurturing the first 1,000 days of life. What is gentle parenting? And if you don't do gentle parenting, then as in many cases in Jamaica, you're going to have high incidences of adverse childhood experiences. So gentle parenting focuses on building trust, connections between parent and child, using empathy, respect, and understanding, avoiding punitive discipline methods, and encouraging emotional regulation in both the parents and the children. So why focus on the first 1,000 days of life? Our behaviors are driven by our brains. And the brain, the critical period of brain development is the first 1,000 days of life. It sets the foundation for emotional, social, and cognitive growth. And early adverse experiences can lead to poor mental health, the risk of chronic diseases, and we have a major problem in Jamaica, impaired relationship. We also have a major problem of impaired relationships in Jamaica, as in shown in our everyday experiences. Any day you take up the gleaner, you will see problems in relationship. Gentle parenting can prevent these outcomes. So here's a summary of the brain's development in the first 1,000 days. Brain size grows to 80 or 90% of the brain that you have now. That is in the first 1,000 days. Synapses formation peaks with 7 to 1,000 new connections per second, reaching twice the adult number by age 2. 50 to 60% of early brain growth focusing on sensory and motor skills, with 70% of language circuits being formed by age 2. And you know that if you, wherever you come from, whatever language you learn, you carry the accent with you after that. Very difficult to get rid of. Myelination, which is really the hardwiring of the brain, 80% of the major neural pathways are myelinated by the first 1,000 days. Nutrition influences 20 to 30% of development, while emotional and social interaction stimulates more than half of the brain. So it's extremely important, because by age 5, social and emotional stimulation affects 90% of brain pathway that supports emotional regulation, social understanding, and empathy. And always goes back to Hicklin's study here, where he, in his study, shows that over 40% of our population have what we call personality disorders, as is shown in how we treat one another on a day-to-day basis. Therefore, this period is crucial for developing these pathways, as interaction with children, these interaction with caregivers and their environment greatly influence their social and emotional skills. And this can be measured in, as we do in Jamaica, by the level of adverse childhood events. And in Jamaica, we have a high level of adverse childhood events, and as some people call it, traumatizing our children. This is the brain as it develops. You can see at birth, there's very little sparse. By age 6, you notice how thick it is. And then you have the apoptosis that happens in the adolescent period. Therefore, those areas of the brain that you use stay, and those areas that are not used are eliminated. A child that grows up with violence around them, with adverse events, gonna act accordingly. The brain will develop and adapt to this. And this is just another way to show that the early period, they are critical periods. The first 3 years to the first 5 years. After that, things wane. And also, there's another peak in the adolescent period. Coming back to the generation that we are talking about, screen time. The pediatric associations across the world have advised very clearly that you should limit screen time during the developing stages, especially during the first 3 years. Because what is necessary for brain development is face-to-face conversation, proto-conversations, the eye-to-eye orientation, the vocalization, the hand gestures, the movement of the arms and the head, all in coordination to express interpersonal awareness and emotion. If a child interacts with the screen too much, this is going to be impaired. I see your hand is that's coming up. The benefits of gentle cheering strengthen parent-child bond, reduces stress and anxiety, encourages healthy emotional development, builds confidence and resilience, and lowers the risk, and I can't emphasize this too much, lowers the risk of adverse childhood experience. And it also talk about practice active listening. Park your thoughts and your feelings and listen to the child. Validate the child's feeling. Use clear communication. Model the behavior you want to see and acknowledge your child's activities. Manage parental stress, because if you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of the child. Practice self-care and not addressing behavioral issues. Focus on understanding triggers and using our values. So what we're talking about is that everyone should learn more about practicing gentle parenting, and there are a number of resources to share. This is one that I focus on, the mental health and wellness primary care parenting program in health centers, and we can talk, that is part of the research that was done at the university by Walker and Lopez. And also, since we are into the generation, the digital generation, if we are going to change our parenting practices in Jamaica, and there is no question that the parenting practices need to be changed, as the Early Childhood Commission has started to do, they are developing an app for the first 1,000 days, and there is a wealth of information that's available for those apps. Thank you very much. I hope I stayed within my time. God bless.
Thank you, Dr. Wright. Call to action. Parents need to practice because there's no manual. All right, we're going to move on to our next presenter, Dr. Bent. And Dr. Bent is from the one and only pediatric hospital in JA, for the time being we heard. So she's a dedicated pediatrician working at the Bustamante Hospital for Children and at Integrated Health by Design. She focuses on providing compassionate and comprehensive care to children. She has a special interest in mental health of youth and actively seeks to address the unique emotional and psychological challenges they face. Dr. Bent is currently pursuing the university. She's at the University of California, Irvine TNT Primary Care, pursuing Irvine's TNT Primary Care Psychiatry Fellowship. She's further expanding her expertise in integrating mental health care into primary care settings. Outside of her professional endeavors, she enjoys spending time with God, expressing her creativity through painting, and she cherishes quality time with friends and family. She's a passionate advocate for holistic child health. She strives to make meaningful impact on the well-being of our young patients and their family. Dr. Bent, please take the virtual mic.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me. I will go ahead and share my screen. 1 second. All right, great. Just so that, okay, ready. So we're speaking about parenting a child with a medical diagnosis. What are some of the challenges that parents and caregivers may face? And what are some of the strategies that we can use to to overcome these challenges. Oh, okay. The slide is not moving. There we go. All right, so we are focusing today on Generation Alpha, and that's, children born after 2010. And so they're the first generation to be born entirely in the 21st century, growing up in a world influenced by technology, social media, and rapid global change. So this generation is characterized by familiarity, with digital tools from a very young age. It seems as if from their out of the womb, they're on the tablet, they're on the phones. And so they're tech savvy, they're aware of what's happening globally, they're focused on sustainability. So they're influenced by increasing awareness of the environmental and social issues as young as they are. And we need to focus more on individualism as it relates to each child. So personalized learning and experiences reflecting a shift towards a more customized education and other services geared towards our little alphas. Now, these are just some pointers to the key to addressing or parenting Generation Alpha, where we're not shying away from using technology, but encouraging healthy technology use. So setting timers and limits, fostering emotional intelligence, supporting personalized learning, instilling problem-solving skills in our children, and instilling resilience in our children, cultivating an environmental awareness so that they know what is happening around them, promoting social skills in a digital age where a child is now fully engaged to a tablet, and so it's almost as if they don't know how to socialize. And we need to prioritize their physical and mental health and encourage the parents to be involved in their care. Now, when one of our little alphas become ill or they're faced with chronic medical illnesses, it poses physical, emotional, and social challenges, not only on the child, but on the family. So you have conditions from all aspects, whether physical, being asthma, diabetes, trisomy 21, or things that affect your mental, psychological, your autism spectrum disorder. The diagnoses are endless, and it can affect their growth, their academic performance, their social interaction, and also place a burden on them emotionally and financial stress on the family. So some of the challenges that our families and our parents may experience, and along with the children, are emotional. So sometimes the parents feel an overwhelming sense of guilt, grief, and fear, anxiety about the diagnosis, the fear of the unknown, including what is my child's prognosis, what will my child's future be like. The medical bills can be overwhelming. Treatment after treatments that are not available in the government sector, things that you have to get privately, things that you have to get overseas. And so the medical bill places a financial burden on the family. The parents, the family can experience issues with time management. So it's almost like they're sucked into a black hole. It's almost as if they're being pulled in 10 different directions. So they have to balance medical appointments, therapies, with everyday activities, with going to work, with caring for themselves, with caring for other family members. They can often experience social isolation. So they feel misunderstood by their friends who have children without medical illnesses. And so, other friends may say they're too sensitive, and so they're rather to stay by themselves sometimes. And so it may pose challenges on existing friendships and forming new friendships. And it almost seems as if problems can be any and everywhere. So the siblings may feel neglected. Mommy and daddy is always focused on little Johnny, who is the sick little one in our family, and they forget all about me. They forget all about, things that are going on at school, that I'm doing well here. And so the siblings may become resentful, sometimes overly burdened with other responsibilities. We may have some behavioral and developmental challenges with our or little alphas that may be associated with the medical diagnosis or as a result of the medical diagnosis. And sometimes finding and accessing resources to help with offsetting the costs of the illness can be difficult. So whether it's funding or medical education or social support, it can all be challenging. But we're here not only to look at the problems, but also the solution. So some strategies to address these challenges includes building a support system. It's very important that we speak to our parents or family members to connect with other parents, other support groups around your child's diagnosis, especially if it's a chronic one. So for example, parents with children with diabetes, there is a support group that they can message in and ask questions, get support from not only other parents, but medical personnel, which are also in that group. We encourage parents and families to lean on friends and family members, share the responsibilities. So mommy doesn't have to be the one that always comes to the medical visit. She may need to take a day for herself, to go out with her friends, to rest, which is very important. Prioritize communication. So communicating with your child. Don't underestimate their ability to understand what is happening with them. And sometimes with certain diagnoses, parents rather to keep it from them, but it may actually be more detrimental than good for them. And so in order to reduce their fear, reduce their anxiety, talk to them in an age appropriate way about what is happening with them. Alleviate their fears, try to answer their questions, communicate with their siblings. So ensure that they don't feel left out or undervalued. Ensure that they feel included. And you try to communicate with your professionals. So your doctors, you want to ask questions. You want to be sure of what's happening with your child. As it relates to school, ask questions. How can I redirect my child in a particular direction? How can I help my child to excel to all that she or he can be? Develop a routine. So sometimes it may feel like the day is just chaotic because things are just popping up left, right, and center. But with having a routine, with some amount of structure, your medical appointments, family therapies, and your family activities, it can alleviate some of the pressures that you feel. And don't only develop a routine around the medical diagnosis, but put in the routine time for play, time for relaxation, not only for you, but also for the child. And seek professional guidance. It isn't unfamiliar for persons not to cope or not to be coping well. And they may need the help of therapists and counselors and social workers. Do not shy away from getting the help that's needed with coping and for your own emotional support. There is also the entity of exploring financial counseling so that you can rearrange your budget, so that you can have enough not only to provide for the family's need, but also for the medical bills. Practice self-care. One thing that we cannot stop speaking about. Take breaks, recharge, whether if you want to exercise or engage in your hobbies or time with friends, but you must take time for self. Seek counseling or join a support group, as we mentioned before, and advocate for your child. Learn about your child's condition so that you can make informed decisions. So when even in a discussion with the doctor may present 4 options, and it's not, okay, doctor, tell me what's best. But not only that, okay, step 1 or option 1, option 2, option 3 may not benefit me, but option 4, based on what I've read, may actually help my child and me and may fit into our schedule better. So foster resilience in your child. Encourage your child to...
Don't just remind you that your time. So
okay.
You have 30 seconds to wrap up. Thank you.
No problem. So foster resilience. Encourage them in problem-solving skills, and celebrate their small victories and involve the other siblings in their care. Plan for emergencies, and you try to get the community resources in helping to fund and to offset the cost of the medical care. Now, just a list of some of the agencies in Jamaica that can help with a child with chronic illnesses. So, National Health Fund in your diabetes, asthma, early stimulation program for children with learning disabilities or developmental delays, the Jamaica Council of Persons with Disabilities, for those with disabilities. Don't forget your public health centers and your child protection and family services. We also have the sickle cell unit. Bustamante is also a specialist hospital. And don't forget your other places such as your Jamaica Cancer Society and your Diabetes Association. So in summary, parenting a child with a medical diagnosis is demanding but manageable with the right support and communication. These are my references. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bent. And you encourage us to utilize the community that we have in and around us and to learn to balance as a parent with the other sibling as well. Thank you very much. Just a reminder, our other speakers, you have 7 minutes to speak, and I'll give you, at the 6th minute, I'll raise my hand, so it will be up there. So now we go to Dr. Judith Leiba. Let me tell you what I know out of my head. She's a pediatrician. She is the director of child and adolescent medicine in the Ministry of Health. She will fill in all of that. Dr. Leiba, please take the mic. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Hyatt Beckford. And thanks to Dr. Crosman and our team who invited me. Okay, so I will just press right ahead and go ahead and share my presentation. I presume you are seeing. You are seeing, right?
Yes, Dr. Leiba. We see the recommendation. That's the end of the slide.
Okay. This is the last one.
Up at the top of the slide.
There's something, there's that thing.
Slideshow.
Huh? Yes, but I can't. It's been covered by a strip that shows audio, video participants and stuff.
You can thumbnail. Just thumbnail.
You have to speak a little louder.
Then thumbnail and get it small. You can move it. Just put the icon on it and move it out of the way.
Okay. Oh. Shoot. So Dr. Goldburn has come to the rescue again. Okay. So I was asked to speak about parenting generation alpha, and some of what I say will be redundant, but I will, try to rush that part and speak to parts that would be different from what others have said. So I think both of our two speakers who preceded me spoke about the generation alpha born between 2010 to 2025. The iPad was introduced in 2010. These kids are called iPad kids, and then later on they were called COVID kids, because, of course, we know that COVID affected a part of their schooling and socialization. And they grew up in homes where Alexa can answer questions on a smart speaker. Alexa, what time is it now? Alexa, what's the temperature outside? And they learn at school on interactive surfaces. They're digital natives, as was said before. And educational engagement now seems to be shifting to, it has to be entertaining. It should be hands-on, it must be visual, it must be multimodal, right? Funny enough, in my research, there were some podcasts and some teachers who were complaining that this generation is rude, they have very poor behavior, they're not very obedient, and they cannot read. And I decided to research that some more, and I found that in 1987, they stopped teaching phonics in California. They taught something called the look and say method. It's almost like word recognition as opposed to teaching them phonics, right? And there was a lot of dispute. There's this guy, Robert Flesh, who said that that's crazy. We need to go back to phonics. But there was like a movement to eliminate phonics. And he wrote this book, Why Johnny Can't Read and What You Can Do About It. I'm not sure what the situation, I think they're returning to phonics. But I know like in Jamaica recently, a few children that I've met, they seem to be able to read. They'll read something, but if you give them a strange word, they can't break it down. So I'm not sure if we adopted that look and say method at some point in the lifespan of our education. Okay. Unfortunately, puberty comes earlier for this generation. We're not quite sure why. Some people think it's like environmental factors. Some people attribute it to these forever plastics that are supposed to be in, a lot of substances, water and stuff. Some people attribute it to estrogen, which is in some makeup and other products, right? But whatever it is, puberty seems to be settling at around age 9 for our girls. So adolescence will come earlier, but it will be more prolonged. Why? Because they'll probably stay in school longer and they'll wait longer to earn enough money to move out, so they'll stay with their families longer. And they'll also hold off longer before marriage and kids. People getting married and people having children is going out of vogue. Okay. The earlier onset of adolescence and the earlier physical maturity is associated with more social and educational sophistication. So it's, one could say probably they are surpassing us in terms of, the rate at which they're becoming sophisticated. Okay, what are the downsides and the unknowns in terms of, this current state of affair with our children, who a lot of people said that, the iPad has replaced play. They no longer play, it's the screen or the iPad, right? So there are some downsides: impaired social and brain development, right? And of course, decreased physical activity with attendant problems like obesity. We hear about more children, being on the overweight, obese spectrum as opposed to some time ago, and the type 2 diabetes that's coming upon them. There also seems to be an increase in mental health problems, which they think is highly associated with social media and technology use. In fact, in 2023, when I first spoke about this, the Surgeon General actually in America at that time, he sent out a directive saying that social media, basically he was saying they cannot say that social media is not harmful to your children. And I guess he had to put it like that because the lawyers got on him, right? But basically he was saying it is harmful. He was saying that our parents had been left for too long to deal with this kind of monster of technology. And monster on their own, and that parents should band together. And I guess by implication, he was saying also that the state should help parents to be able to fight these technology companies who their phone whistleblowers have said that they knew that teenage girls in particular had increased rates of anxiety, depression, and self-harm. They knew this, and they kept it. They didn't do anything about it, and they won't even make that data public, right? And whistleblowers have also spoken about how appalled they have been at the type of games that the game developers are doing, and how addictive they are. And these are games that maybe are given to 7, 8, 9-year-old, and they don't care really about the addictive quality. They just want our attention and our data. So I think that part of our strategy should be to inform our children, adolescents, and our parents basically about, yes, technology is good. We can't say that. We can't say it's not. We know COVID taught us that, but we have to understand the bottom line side of it, the commercial side of it with regards to these tech giants. Okay, what are the recommendations? As I said, technology is not all bad, so we have to embrace it, and the parents, they can't shy away from it. They have to embrace technology and digital literacy, and also ensure that their children are digitally literate. They have to, for instance, they have to practice and model safe and appropriate photo sharing. We always tell girls, do not send a naked picture to a boyfriend. I mean, no matter what he says to you, or he's going to marry you, or he loves you so much, do not send a naked picture, right? They have to set boundaries for phone and screen usage, both for themselves, because remember, they also have their phones that they might be somewhat addicted to, and they have to set an example for the children. There is a question as to what age do you give somebody a smartphone? There are some experts who say you should wait until age 15 years, okay? And some people say a little earlier. And on the other side now, so these are kind of like negative stuff. You need to foster more learning and exploration, and like critical thinking, encourage development of emotional intelligence and resilience. Just to say about I mentioned about the Surgeon General last year. Well, today when I was researching, the President Trump's pick for Surgeon General is a lady named Janet Neshwit, and she has proposed banning social media for teenagers. So she has an even more extreme position with regard to social media as opposed to Vivek Murthy. Okay, parents must try to keep open communication to discuss what their children are seeing online. As Dr. Wright said, you park your own thoughts and feelings and listen to the children. What happens sometimes, the children know that they have done something wrong. They're maybe being bullied or something on the internet, and they don't want to tell the parents because they know they did something wrong, and it just, snowballs, right? So we have to keep that open communication and let them feel that even if they did something wrong, they can come and tell us, and we'll get help for them. Teach them about the tricks of disinformation, scammers, predators, and be aware of cyberbullying, which may occur even under your own roof. And I'm appalled sometimes by the stories of persons who have been bullied and they moved from, let's say, California to Florida, and they still experience the cyberbullying. And I know in one particular case that I read, this young person actually killed herself. So that is how, how pervasive and pernicious the cyberbullying can be. Parents have to practice regular family time off technology and positive mental health practices. And of course, we want to get our children outdoor more as opposed to sitting on the screen. And we also want them to be playing with other real life people as opposed to being on their devices. So with that, I will end, Mrs. Hyatt Beckford. I hope I'm within the 7 minutes.
Thank you very much, Dr. Leiba. You encourage us to embrace technology. Boundaries should be set, and we should have an open communication line between us and our children. Thank you very much. All right, our final presenter before we go into the discussion aspect is Miss Georgia Rose. And Miss Rose will be talking to us about the practicality of it all. So Miss Rose, she's actively involved in mental health, education, and early childhood development. She holds a Master's of Science degree in clinical psychology and a Master of Arts degree in infant and early childhood development. She is currently completing her doctorate in early childhood, infant and early childhood development. Georgia has been actively engaged as a clinician within the Western region for approximately 20 years and lectures at the undergrad level at the University of the West Indies Western Campus. She contributes to numerous local print, media articles, and she's an accomplished speaker. In 2015, she was recognized by the Special Education Unit of the Ministry of Education and Youth for unrelenting and untiring service to special education. She's a community activist. She works in the community. She is a past board member of the Peace Management Initiative for St. James. She's a consultant for the Ethics Review Board for kidney transplant in Western Jamaica, and also the bariatric surgery team. She's also the past chairman for the St. James Red Cross, and she has conducted numerous psychosocial support training across the Caribbean on behalf of the International Federation of Red Cross Disaster Mental Health Unit, with a focus on the impact of trauma on children and adolescents. She is passionate about the promotion of mental health and wellness. Without further ado, Miss Rose, please take the virtual mic or the physical mic, depends on where you are. I think you're in the audience over there.
Good evening. Thank you so very much for that, Mrs. Yulene Beckford. Thank you so much for having me. So, Generation Alpha is more plugged in and connected than any other generation, and I believe the speakers that went before me so aptly introduced this generation. We have to understand that they're more familiar and connected with technology than any other generation has ever been. What makes the rest of us cautious and wary gives them comfort, control, and a peace of mind. With that being said, I think we have to recognize as parents and guardians and stewards of this generation that we have a responsibility to aid in the balance between the virtual space and the real world. A study conducted in 2022 that looked at over 1,300 13 to 17-year-olds offers us some amount of clue. And the Yale Center for the Developing Child says to us that the research demonstrated that adolescents, and we're talking about our 13-year-olds upwards, who spent an average of 3 or more hours per day on social media platforms had a higher risk of mental health challenges, including impaired self-esteem and self-perception. Having all of this data and understanding this knowledge, as parents and guardians, we have to recognize that while we may not be able to remove social media and technology from the space of our children, because it is so much a part of their landscape, we have to chart a course that aids and supports their overall and total well-being. We also have to recognize that many of the practices that we may have been exposed to in our youth and as children might be quite archaic, and some might even be obsolete. And I know that can be scary because Generation Alpha demands answers in ways that we are not typically used to. And if we reflect, they ask a lot of questions. They're a very curious generation, and they exist in an age where the knowledge and the answers are right at their fingertips. So Trying to shield or hide them away from things is not going to do us any justice or great service. So we have to use the opportunities that do exist. And I think as parents of this generation, we have a responsibility to understand what it is that our children are engaging with. We ourselves have to go on the platforms. We have to play the games. We have to learn the lingo. And we also have to become comfortable with it. We may not love it, we may not like it. And I can say that as a parent, I think of one game in particular, Roblox. Roblox, I heard about Roblox in the therapy space before my children came home with it, and I was dreading it. And initially, I said no. And I was very firm on the no until we got to a point where I didn't think I had an answer that was a great answer for the no. So then we had to have a compromise, because one of the things we spoke about yesterday evening is giving our children the capacity to earn our trust and to recognize that in everything there is good and bad, and in everything some things are, completely safe and some things are quite dangerous. With that being said, saying no isn't always the answer, because we do have children who will find a way to do it. They will go to school and engage it. They will engage it in other spaces outside of our homes. And as parents, we have to be very mindful that we think we can manage and have a pulse on everything, because the truth is that we cannot. So I remember when we made the decision in our household to permit our children to engage Roblox as a game and as an entertainment, that it had to come with rules. You were only allowed to play with people who you know in a physical way. And before anyone could be added on that space, we, meaning Dad and I, had to authorize it. And as a parent, we periodically have to go into that game and see what is being played and who is being played with. And we have rules like, if someone comes into the game and you don't know them, you either kick them out or you exit the game. And our children have been very forthcoming and very honest, to the best of our knowledge, about those rules. They'll come and say, Mommy, there's a person in the game that we don't know. And before we can respond, they'll say, oh, I kicked them out, or oh, I came out of the game. So we are in a space in time where we have to recognize that our failure or incapability to adequately respond to the technological needs, because it is a need at this point in time. You'd be remiss to remove your child from the entire technical space and think that they will survive as an adult, because when they enter into their adult capacities with the peers of their cohort, they will have to demonstrate mastery of those technological skills that are the norm and the standard of their generation. So we have to provide them with the answers that make sense, the answers that are practical and reliable. We have to force them to step away and plug out from technology and the devices in meaningful ways. So there has to be time for technology, and there has to be time for the human self. Time to go outside and play, time to exercise, and time to be creative. I read an article that says what Generation Alpha is being robbed of is the opportunity and the time to get to know themselves. They are bombarded significantly by all the trappings and demands of the drug known as technology. We as the parents have to recognize that while we may not be able to free them and shield them from all the effects of the drug, we do have the power and the capacity to manage and moderate it. Take them to the beach, take them outside, take them to the country, take them to places where, and I've seen this, there was a study that was done with rats. Dr. Delahaye often refers to this study, where the rats were exposed to substances such as heroin and cocaine and marijuana and alcohol. And then the rats were placed in a space where they were able to bond and play and be family with other rats. And what they found was, in those instances, the rats chose company and social engagement over the drugs, even though they had demonstrated chemical addictions. And I see that often with children. If children get into a space where there are other children and there is free play, they will put the devices down and engage in the free play. But we as the parents have to create that space that makes the free play attractive and meaningful, so that they are willing to step away from the devices. Over back to you, Lady Yule Beckford. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Miss Rose. Miss Rose encouraging us to encourage others. Play is important, and it's important that children get to know themselves. We have to calm them down from the noise, the many noises that they are hearing. and community is important. Now we're in a time where persons get an opportunity to ask questions. So we have our 4 presenters and they are ready and willing to answer any question that we have. So we have a first question to Dr. Wright. Let me get it up properly. Right, Dr. Wright. There's a question in the chat that says, how do we deal with challenges in strengthening parenting skills in parents who have not yet resolved their own trauma? They have their ACEs. That's 1. And 2, how do we instill emotional intelligence skills and social skills in this generation when caregivers may have these challenges or social media prevents these learning experience? We'll take that and then we go to Dr. Bent for another question.
Yes, and that's why I talk about the Ministry of Health and the primary health care. It's well known that 90% or more of parents are gonna go into primary health care during the first 2, 3 years, 5 years of the children's life. And that's the time to recognize what's happening with the parents and to instill proper parenting skills in those parents so that they can take care of the children properly. You can't, if the mother and father is under severe stress, then they are going to act out and not take care of the children properly. And therefore, stress management and taking care of themselves has to be part of the everyday skill that when the parent come to the clinic, that is given to them. Not talking about mental disorders alone, but everyday mental health and stress management practices. And therefore, again, that's why I come back to the technology, that since we are in a digital age, we have to reach out to the population in a digital way also and remind them through the digital technology, the phones that most parents will have on a regular basis, remind them through text or whatever way is developed that the ways of taking care of themselves and taking care of their children. When they come to the clinic, that's the time, instead of sitting down and watching Days of Our Lives, they need to be on the screen. Is the time to educate them. And the content is already in the Ministry of Health that is to be focused on, that every clinic should have these programs in and running so that you can get to the mothers and fathers, and when they go home, there is a follow-up, and the measurement should be through adverse childhood events. So we know when the parents are traumatizing the children and need some mental health help and stress management help. And also, last of all, the linkage. The time is gone where Ministry of Health, Ministry of Education interact in silos. The Ministry of Health sees most of the children 0 to 3, and then the early childhood education, early childhood institutions take over. The two have to partner together that you can get the inputs in that age. There was Dr. Leiba knows this, that we developed an emotional intelligence book that's been in the Ministry of Health for some time. I don't believe it's been pushed enough, but that is also another way. The content that the Ministry of Health and Education is already there, but we need to get it out to the population. Not only the uptown people, because the uptown people already have the apps and are using it to help their children, but you have to get it to the rest of the population. Thanks.
I'm hearing you saying that the pillars need to be activated and that we need to work together. We need to be bonding more. the part that said, how do we instill emotional intelligence skills and social skills? You think you adequately want to go back and give us a little bit more on that part, Dr. Wright?
Well, there, in the Ministry of Health, there is a booklet that spells it out, how to grow smart children, and that was developed from in around 2006. It has all the information. The Ministry of Health and Ministry of Education has all the information in it. It's a matter of getting it out and focusing on it. Whatever the attention you give to anything makes it thrive. If you don't give the attention, then it's not going to thrive. And it takes cash to care. So you have to spend the money in the early years. And how our system is, most of the money is spent on the later years. You have to shift some of that to the early childhood education and the parenting, and get parenting to the masses of the society. Otherwise, you will be doing the same thing over and over and getting the same outcome. Thank you.
Very well, very well. Thank you very much, Dr. Wright. And I'm happy that we have persons here from the ministry that can have those discussions from high up. Dr. Bent, your question. I'm a mother of 3 with a child diagnosed with terminal illness. I cannot inform the rest of the family as I really do not know how to. Do family meetings occur to help with this?
Yes, they do. So good evening again. So as medical professionals, especially at Bustamante Hospital, where I work, that I can speak of, we do facilitate family meetings, and in the family meetings, you're welcome to involve other members of the family. So if you're having a difficult time breaking the bad news to others, we can have a family meeting where we facilitate that. We've also had family meetings where we facilitate breaking the bad news to the child, because sometimes the parents are unsure of how to speak to them about the illness. And so that can be facilitated, especially if you speak with your healthcare provider.
Very good. And just to plug here, we at Spanish Town in the Child Guidance, I have offered that service to my clients as well. If they have issues and they want to get help, we can always facilitate a family meeting. Thank you very much, Dr. Bent. Dr. Wright, back at you again. Who is responsible for instilling the skills in the parents? Days of our life, that's old school, they're saying, now they're on the device watching the Asian shows and the TikTok. And the comment is, excellent presentation, Dr. Wright. So who is responsible?
Well, we go back to regular public health principles, early recognition and treatment. So you have to do the screening, right? There's no question that every time there's a protocol for screening in primary care for the adults that I know is not done as it should. I'm taking on the Ministry of Health. But and if the screening is done, when you pick up a lot of the problems, and there are other tools that can be implemented in the primary care system that will help to do that. And the mental health team is not only the mental health team, the primary health care team, because every doctor is able to recognize anxiety and treat depression. They've been trained. I know they said they're not trained, but that's not true. They might tell you don't have enough time, and I can understand that, but the training is there and it needs to be done. So it's really the early recognition and the early intervention and treatment where necessary. But the prevention and the screening is what I would focus on so that the early recognition can take place.
And you're saying primary care needs to be more primary caring.
Well, they have to be primary care. And I keep saying this, all the tools are there. And it's all, if you look on the NCD screening, NCD front sheet, it talks about all the screening instruments, including depression. And there's also one that's been rolled out for the adolescent population.
Picking on you, Dr. Wright, could they say they don't have the time to do all of what is required? Could that be an issue?
I tell you something. When I came to the ministry first, we started with the young tool, which was 6 questions. And they tell we didn't have time for that. So we went back, and now on the screening instrument, 2 questions.
Oh.
Right? Can't tell me you don't have time for that. 2 questions, and it's still not being done. So it's not a matter of not having time, it's a matter of attitude and matter of socialization. And this is where Dr. Goldburn has been saying it starts at the university and in training.
Yeah.
But it's the first 1,000 days that I think primary care need to focus on. So a lot of the things that come after that can be implemented and followed. And no screen. I know I'm going to get feedback on this, but no screen for the first 18 months of a child's life.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Wright. Miss Rose, your time. I have a grandmother and I really don't know much about the device. How do I get my 11-year-old to go to bed at a reasonable hour and keep off the device?
Go ahead. Yes. That's
Oh,
such
you
an
didn't even-
important question. Yes, not only, I know our grandmother is the one who is posing it, but it's a question we hear from parents across all age groups. I want to reinforce what Dr. Wright stated. I am going to go a little further, Dr. Wright. My philosophy is no screen time before age 5. They don't need it. The American Pediatric Association says that children should not be introduced to screens before they are communicating effectively and able to read and write. For our grandmother in the comments, we want to have clear boundaries and guidelines in our home. We call it screen time policies and bedtime routines. At 11 years old, you want to make sure that your child is in bed between 8:30 and 9 p.m. And I like to say to children in the therapy space and in my household that bedtime is not punishment. Bedtime is a part of our investment and safeguarding of your health and wellness. So when we send you to bed, we're not trying to do something bad to you. We're trying to care for you. And, we talk about the benefits of what going to sleep at night really does for the individual. So this has to become a routine in our home. And I say to parents, you go to bed at that time no matter what, even on the weekends. So it becomes built into their system. And then when do we allow the screens to be used? And this, of course, has to be moderated based on the age and stage of the child. So for some homes, you only use the screen on the weekends. For some homes, the screen only comes out after homework has been completed and before a certain time in the evening. I like to say that, children should be off of screens at least an hour or 2 before they're going to be retiring to bed. And if you still have that type of authority in your household, they probably shouldn't be using it during the weekday unless it is for school and research purposes. It's very difficult if you haven't started it already. So we say to parents, make it a practice so that you don't have to go back to fix something. Because if you've had rampant screen time use, you use it as you so desire, then it's hard to take it away because it's like an addiction. But remember, we are the parents, and we want to be the ones to lead the children, not the children lead us. So, not to let it be an argument, but just to say, we're going to change things up a little bit in the house. Grandma, this is a dialogue I'm sharing with you. We're going to change things up a little bit in the house because the research is out there. And there are a couple of countries that are actually putting in national bans on screen time for children under a certain age. And I was interested when Dr. Leiba spoke about the Surgeon General and the proposals and the warnings. I don't know how I feel about that as yet, but I understand where they're coming from. But to say that, we're going to put some changes in place, we are going to be retiring to bed at 9 in the night, and we have to lock everything off. I say to parents for younger children, sometimes you have to lay beside them for a little bit to build it into the routine. And we're only going to use the device on these days and at these times. And we have to stick to it, mummies and daddies and grandmas and grandpas and uncles and aunties, because the children often say that we're not consistent and that we make the rules up based on our moods. And if we do that, we're not going to get the buy-in. So we have to be consistent and allow the children to follow the rules in a very continuous and routine manner.
Okay, thank you. So you're saying to us, adults need to be adults, parents need to be parents and do their parenting job. Thank you very much, Ms. Rose. Dr. Leiba, Australia is nearing a social media ban for children under 16 years of age. Would you recommend this for us here in Jamaica? What's your thoughts?
I haven't reached that point yet. I think that we need more education. I think it has to be like stepwise. I think we need more public education of the adults and also the children. And there's another step, I think. It's like parent groups, solidarity of parents in terms of deciding that, this group of parents will not be doing this. And then you go on to legislation. That's how I think the progression should go. Public education, parent education, child education, then you form groups that decide that this is what they want, and then after that you go on to legislation.
All right, thank you very much. There's a public question. Did you see Dr. Leiba between you and Dr. Goldberg? Can you respond to the MOH involvement with Ministry of Education to parents?
Well, through our child guidance clinics, we have always done like parenting seminars like we're doing now, whether on this, kind of wide scale basis, or we may have like parent groups that they may have a particular problem. Let's say parents of children with ADHD, and we have those groups for maybe 8 weeks or that. So that has been mainly the way that we have been involved in terms of parenting. I mean, there's the individual counseling that you'll have with the parent, and then there's the, as I said, the parent group, and then the seminars. And also, through the Child Health and Development Passport, there are some guidelines in there in terms of how the child should be developing and how the child should be behaving. And if we use that passport the way it should be used, meticulously and carefully, I think we can teach our parents quite a lot, and they'll be able to pick up when problems arise.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you all for this excellent presentation. Georgia, probably you can take this one, but you can listen. So Dr. Shetty is asking, any practical ideas against allowing devices to babysit and guide our children?
So that is definitely a no-no. And I think Dr. Shetty uses the most appropriate word that we have. Let the devices babysit our children. And for those of us that work in child and adolescent mental health spaces or child and adolescent health spaces, we often hear parents who say, that's the only way I get to keep them quiet. That's the only way I keep them out of trouble. We have to remember that children were never meant to be quiet. I think a big part of it is that we also have to manage our expectations of children. And we have to recognize that they have the right and the freedom, and it's quite normal for them to move about and to run around and to be a little loud and to be curious. And therefore, they don't need to be babysat by a device. They don't need to constantly be entertained. I was reading an article that spoke about the benefit of boredom to children's later mental health and wellness. Our children have to be bored so that their creative juices will flow and they'll learn to self-regulate and learn to self-entertain. We have bought into this philosophy that they always have to be entertained. They always have to be engaged. And that's not true. The definition of play is unstructured activity where they go out and make fun of the world around them. We as the adults or the caregivers in the space don't have to be making meaning for them all the time. How did we survive without social media? We did. And the mere fact that we did mean that they can also. And we have an obligation to allow our children to be children, because the reality is that there is so much research and evidence that tells us that the device use impacts the neural hardware and architecture of the brain. It changes how the brain communicates with itself. It influences the brain growth. It influences how the brain functions. So it is having an impact on our children. And most of that is not the most necessary impact. Parents will say the device exposes them to a lot and it teaches them a lot. It teaches them a lot of things that they don't need. A 2-year-old doesn't really need to know how to read. If they can, great, that's amazing, but they don't have to. You know, what are they going to be doing? Are they filling out forms, buying property, trading stocks? No. Because if you're a 2-year-old and you can read, but you're not potty trained, you can't feed yourself, you can't tie your lace, you're still behind. So, you know, we have to refocus our expectations and our perspective on childhood and recognize that, you know, we have to step away from this dependence on the device. Otherwise, we're going to reap some very deleterious effects later in our children's development.
Thank you, Jay. Yes, Dr. Wright?
Yes, I was saying that in the Ministry of Health, there is this booklet, the parenting program in health centers. That was one of the recommendations of the Mental Health Task Force. And one of the recommendations is that this program, which has been tested here, piloted here, and followed over 20 years by Walker Lopez from ECTAL and from the university, should be scaled up. And every primary care center should have it. It's already in the primary care, but there is a manual we're talking about. It's a manual for implementing the parenting program. So that is one of the ways that the Ministry of Health can move forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. To back up something that Georgia said, just to add, we also need our children to play with crayons, because we need to build their fine motor skills. Right now, with the advent of devices, their fine motor skills are not where it ought to be. Right? So we need to get that going as well. Dr. Bent, your time again. Anybody else have any practical ideas before I go back to Dr. Bent?
Sorry, Miss Beckford, if you may just allow me. I mean, I've had some parents of Gen Alpha where the child is arguing that they don't need to write. Why, you know, you have a computer and you have a keyboard. Why do you need to learn handwriting? So, you know, those are the lens to which this thing has gone. And let me thank Dr. Wright for reminding us about the Reach Up program, which has been started certainly in the ministry and in certain health centers, but we need to scale it up. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Leiba. Dr. Bent, can you give us some tips as to how a parent can manage a new medical diagnosis for a child?
Okay. All right. So managing a new medical diagnosis. So to not make it new, meaning, so learning as much as you can about the illness itself, learning how that will impact you, impact your child, impact your daily life. And so in learning what the diagnosis is, how it will impact you, you know how to go forward. Set up your support groups around you, right? So understand that it can't just only be you, because there is such a thing as caregiver burnout. And so it is for you to draw on, you know, the father or the mother, the parent, the grandparents, the aunts, the uncles, the friends, the godparents, to fill in where they can. So to ensure that, you know, you're having a discussion with your child as to, you know, what the diagnosis is, what does it mean for your child, what do they understand about it, and explain in simple terms to them what the diagnosis is and what does it mean for them going forward. So let's say, for example, my child just been diagnosed with diabetes. Explaining in simple terms what is not functioning. What does that mean? Really eating 10 sweeties or 3 ice creams in one day, and how that will affect me going forward. So what would I need to do to adjust? And so it really does come down to just education around what the diagnosis and the illness is.
Thank you very much. I want to hear from the parents in the audience, not my panelists. What are some other practical mechanism we can employ to use with our children? So while you think about that and put it in the chat, I'm going to throw this question out. Where should parenting education start? At school, in the primary school, at home? I'm building on this question. Should it be in school? Should it be in home? Should it be at church? Where should we start? So this is anybody can take on this one.
I have a definite position on that. Parenting should be in the curriculum at school, age-appropriate curriculum, and be followed up in the other areas, Ministry of Health, etc. But it definitely, parenting, gone are the days when the grandparents model parenting and they pass down a lot of things that should not or have changed in the society. So there needs to be a definite curriculum for parenting. I know people might disagree with me, but that is my position.
And what you saying, primary or secondary? What level?
Start age appropriate. To start it what is appropriate early in school and move it through. As as children progress, they get the appropriate level stuff.
All right, thank you. Anybody else want to chime in?
Well, I want to support, if I may, I want to support Dr. Wright. And I'm actually thinking about the school mental health literacy curriculum. Perhaps we should develop like an appendix on parenting so that it can be taught in the schools. So that's an idea. We'll see. We'll work on it.
All right, so somebody say, yes, that's what we want to know. But what are the programs in parent education? What are the programs in parent education? Anybody know this one?
Well, okay, I don't know. I'm not quite sure what they're asking, but the parenting, the Parenting Support Commission, right, which is really supposed to be the agency primarily involved in, parenting education and support. Their model of work or their methodology was to produce, like, to designate parenting places in every nook and cranny in Jamaica, like, let's say a church or a community center, right? And then to also identify parent mentors in communities who would then mentor the younger parents or parents who are not so experienced. Now, I'm not sure, how far that methodology has been propagated. It sounds like a good idea in principle, but I can't say how much it has really materialized.
Okay. All right. Anybody else want to jump in there?
Hi, Ms. Yulin. I think Dr. Wright also had made a point looking at some of the programs that, okay, so he has put up something. So I'm going to allow him to do that then. Dr. Wright, you were putting up a slide.
All I'm saying is that there are a lot of curriculums that have been previously developed. So it's a matter of tapping into the resource that's already been there so that we can utilize it. The early childhood have done it. The university have developed. What I was showing is the one from Jamaica Early Childhood Curriculum Guide. That's just one. But there are others that's been well developed in Jamaica. Sorry, go right ahead, Dr. Crossman.
Right. So we do have programs. There are programs, but I think what needs to happen, and that's what I think Dr. Wright was saying, that Ministry of Health and Wellness, Ministry of Education, we really need to collaborate, look at the curriculums that we have in schools and the age appropriate guide, as well as in our health centers, in our communities, and see how we can move towards the gentle parenting, the different parenting styles that we need to impart to our parents to be able to ensure that our children are getting the best that they can. Right. Over.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Crossman. And somebody is asking, as you said, Dr. Leiba, somebody agree with what we were saying. I'm not sure what aspect of it, but they said, why do you write? And we have Alexa. So I want to take up that. Why do we need to write?
Oh dear. Shall I tell you that writing reinforces learning? Right? I remember I was giving a talk at the school, and this teacher was complaining that like post-COVID or immediately after, she would give a lecture and nobody, I guess they had it on their devices. And she said, you're not taking notes. No, miss, it's on my device. But when you write, it goes to your brain, it goes to your hand, and there is, added value in terms of learning. And also journaling is so very important to, I think, maintaining good mental health. So those are the two things that come to mind right now.
All right, thank you. Anybody else? Dr. Bent, any idea why we need to write?
So I do agree with Dr. Leiba. It does facilitate some amount of learning. It actually helps with your fine motor skills. So yes, writing, is to record what is being said, but it also helps them to be able to use their hands for other intricate things. Using a knife and a fork, doing small activities with the hands. So it's not only just about, writing so that we can record, writing so that we can learn, but developing our fine motor skills. Very important for human development.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's also about gripping and clasping, getting a grip on yourself. So that's one of the things that writing does, help you to grip your pen or your pencil and to hold things. You're using up your muscles and your digits properly. All right, Dr. Earl Wright asked a question there. He's shouting a question to all of us who can answer in a minute. Can someone state a position on corporal punishment? Anybody out there? Oh, by the way, Dr. Crossman, did any of the parents give any feedback on practical tips?
None so far.
All right, thanks.
But I think we have to the, yes,
Okay.
and it seems as if Dr. Goldburn is trying to say something.
Oh, yes, I was just saying about the whole writing situation there with the fingers. That also that what about those students who can't afford the devices? So it means that those persons will be left out. So I think as a basic skill, person need to have the basic of writing and being able to use their fine motor skills, as the doctor said a while ago, because we know that technology can also fail. So we need to make sure we have these basic skills that are there. We can be enhanced by digital devices, but not the other way around. We have digital device doing all that you're doing, and you don't have that basic mechanical skills which you have all the time with you. Over.
Thanks, Dr. G. Anybody wants to shout with on the corporal punishment, or we'll do it in the next segment? Can we look at it in the next segment tomorrow or so for it, Dr. Crossman?
Sure.
All right, thanks, Dr. Wright. All right, so this afternoon, I want to thank you again for sharing with us. And as I said, Generation Alpha was our major topic, and they're also called Mini Millennials and Generation C. Now, if I said V earlier, it's actually Generation C. That's what one of the articles said they are called. Thank you again, Miss Foster, Nurse Foster, over to you.
Thank you so much, Miss Beckford. We have come to the end of this enriching and insightful parenting webinar. I want to take a moment to reflect on what we have achieved together and extend a heartfelt thanks to all who made this event a success. Today, we explore the unique challenges and opportunities that come with raising Generation Alpha, a generation defined by their digital fluency, creativity, and need for nurturing guidance in an ever-evolving world. The tools, strategies, and perspectives shared by our esteemed speakers have equipped us to better support and understand this remarkable generation. To our moderator, thank you for so ably guiding the discussion this evening. Our panelists, thank you for your expertise and for sharing your valuable insights. Your knowledge and practical advice has left a lasting impact on all of us. To our organizing team, your dedication and meticulous planning made this webinar seamless and engaging. Without your hard work behind the scenes, today's event would not have been possible. To our parents, thank you for your generosity and commitment to the vision of empowering parents and caregivers. Your support has been integral to the success of this event. And our other guests, thank you for your participation and for taking the time to be here. Your presence shows your dedication to becoming more equipped to guide and support the young ones who we care for. As we leave today, let us remember that raising Generation Alpha is a journey of shared learning, adaptability, and patience. Together, we can nurture a generation that is not only prepared to thrive in a fast-paced world, but also anchored on values of empathy, resilience, and respect. Once again, thank you for all being a part of this webinar. I wish you continued growth and success in your parenting journey. Let us take what we have learned today and put it into action as we nurture the leaders, creators, and innovators of tomorrow. Thank you again, and have a wonderful evening. Don't forget to join us tomorrow, Thursday, November 28th, 2024, at 6 p.m., when we look at the topic, Parenting Generation Z.